Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So we had an emergency meeting with our producers last night about the direction of the show, and to my regret, I announced to you that I will be reading off a teleprompter for this episode. So there have been a lot of egregious errors that have been made, mostly my responsibility. I'm the one on here. I'm where the rubber meets the road, so I'll take the heat for it. But yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and read off a teleprompter for this episode and see where it goes and where it takes us. Then we'll determine what the trajectory of the show will be. So we'll go ahead and start doing that right now, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, thank you all for joining us this evening. It is December 31st, 2018, Monday, New Year's Eve day. I am the parasite Richard Tex. It is my honor to be here once again. We are privileged and glad that you are allowing us into your home. Another thing that you should allow into your home is the Google and the Apple and the Alphabet parent company to Google's recording devices and apparatuses, so they can monitor all of your actions, record your conversations, they can learn your... I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the teleprompter cut off there, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, we're not going to disrespect you, the ladies and audience at home, by reading off a teleprompter. It's a slap in the face, it's a shoe to the nuts, it's a kick in the ass, it's a poke to the eye, it's a kick of the shoe, a trip of the foot, whatever the case may be. It's just not something that we're really going to do. I mean, yeah, it's fun to stare at letters and read and get paid and get a paycheck and everything for it too, but as far as that goes, it's not really something that we advocate here. And just based on personal experience, most of the talk shows that I've watched and listened to thoroughly and are regular dedicated listener to, they usually don't ever follow teleprompters. And in fact, I've never actually... See, pro wrestling, for example, back in the good old days, the writers, the producers, actors, whatever they call them, the agents that would go through the matches and would go through the character development with a lot of the wrestlers, they would come up with some ideas of what they should do with their character for interviews, promos, interference, backstage occurrences, and then the in-ring matches and valets, managers, all that. So when they would have an interview, what they would do is they would just say, talk about a couple things here and then run with it. So it was incumbent on the pro wrestler to utilize his own character and creativity to come up with something that would be hilarious or great or something that would entertain the crowd. So what you had out of that era of wrestling was a lot of very entertaining characters. Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulkamania, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Rocky Maivia, Earthquake, John Tenta, he's pretty hilarious. And then of course you had legends like the Shockmaster, Ric Flair. Ric Flair is never really my favorite, but apparently a lot of people like him. And just the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, the Rockers, a lot of very colorful, shiny characters, and that was because they had direction. Now what's happened lately to pro wrestling is they script everything. So more or less the pro wrestlers now are just glorified actors. They almost have to say word for word what has been written for them by an agent. They don't just, they just, they'll come up with something and say, concerning your confidentiality restrictive covenant and invention in agreement, wishes to remind you of your continuing obligation. I mean, anybody can read off a piece of paper or memorize lines and restate them and regurgitate them. It's not that difficult. All it really is a measure of is your ability to follow orders and stay in line and succeed at working underneath as a servant or as working in servitude or as a slave, basically. So that's obviously something we're not going to practice here that often. Plus, I don't really have that good of a memory. It's hard enough just remembering what day of the week it is, much less multiple lines of text and writing and everything. No, yeah, it is a bit hypocritical because I just said that anybody can do it, but with enough practice you can. Some people need to practice more, some people practice less. It's all about time management. Alright, getting to some more important discussions, ladies and gentlemen. We had a news article online here. What they found is that Wi-Fi radiation could increase miscarriages by almost 50%. 48% was actually the number. So, the World Health Organization has classified Wi-Fi radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen, which means it's likely to cause cancer. Kaiser Permanente Division of Research found that pregnant women are exposed to non-ionizing radiation from magnetic fields, such as those from power lines, transformers, not the cartoons. These are transformers. The way a transformer works is you put alternating current into one side, alternating current comes out the other side. Based on the number of turns in the transformer, it changes the voltage. So let's say 115 volts is going in, maybe 10,000 is coming out. That's basically what a transformer is. It transforms the voltage level. They also found that wireless networks and wireless devices could increase miscarriages up to 48%. So what they did is they had this ban. If you 900 some females, pregnant women volunteered to be a part of this survey or study, research, whatever you call it. And that band was able to measure their magnetic radiation exposure. So they had 4 different classes. Class 1 to 4. 4 was highest exposure radiation, 1 was the least. In class 1, they were only about a 10% chance of a miscarriage of some variation. And class 4 was up to a 48% chance. Now this doesn't mean that that the women signed up to expose themselves to radiation and see if they would get miscarriages. They were just normal people that volunteered to be part of they probably got paid to be part of the research project, but ultimately they were just going out with their normal lives, and they had some little band that would record their magnetic radiation. I'm sure the band maybe gave off some inherent radiation as well. 10% seems like a pretty high number even for a low radiation exposure, but 50% is definitely a bit alarming. So one of the recommendations was that you turn Wi-Fi off at night, because nighttime, see what Wi-Fi does is Wi-Fi right now is only at a 2.4 to 5 gigahertz frequency spectrum, same with the microwave. A microwave is 2.4 gigahertz. One of the reasons why a microwave is 2.4 gigahertz is because it's not supposed to interfere with other devices or signals or whatever the FCC says it can send out. 2.4 gigahertz is what a lot of devices run off of because it's a frequency band that's available to anyone to use. So Wi-Fi radiation is literally microwave radiation, just a lower intensity. I mean, if you were to have some super high-powered wireless network, yeah, it's basically microwaves, equivalent to putting your head in a microwave. See, a microwave is about anywhere from 800 to thousands of watts of power. And you know, a Wi-Fi device, it might be putting out a couple of watts. So yeah, there's a bit of a difference there, but when you, over time, over exposure, then you're gonna probably feel some of the ramifications of it. So I mean in here, we keep everything wired and disengage the wireless network aspect. It's easier that way. Plus, you know, as far as phones and everything, it's not really mandatory to be hooked up to the internet at all times of the day. I mean, we've got plenty of time to access the internet here, satisfying sponsorships, whatever the case may be. So it's not really necessary to have a phone for it all the time. As far as that goes, I'm definitely a little old school. But nowadays, there's talk of, I even seen an AT&T commercial the other day about 5G that's coming out. So 5G uses frequency range all the way up to 100 gigahertz. And that's getting up to where water resonates with it. And what that does is it shakes the DNA and it breaks apart. Think of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. It was that old bridge where it would sway back and forth for about an hour, and then it finally collapsed and fell into the river. That's generally the fundamental example of what resonant frequency means. And when you get these high gigahertz, like up to 100 gigahertz that 5G is utilizing, it's basically going to do that with your cell DNA. If you've ever seen a picture of DNA, it kind of looks like a bridge. So what's going to happen with the 5G is it'll shake around like the Tacoma Narrows Bridge, and then it'll break apart. Now, yeah, it's not, when you think of that analogy, it sounds like everyone will just die instantly. But it's a slow death, which sometimes is even a little bit worse. Because, you know, rather than just, boom, you're dead, whatever Shadowgate funny theme they got for you. But in this case, the slow death, it's a slow, suffer, agonizing, eventual decline to being 6 feet under. So that's why we're here to sound the alarm, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it appears that 5G is an unavoidable at this time. And the nice thing about higher frequency like that, well, I mean, there's really, yeah, it sends information quicker over wireless networks, but it does have more difficulties penetrating walls, because the higher the frequency, you can keep it out of your house easier if you were to use something like conductive paint. Or just thicker concrete is one thing that definitely cuts down on wireless, as a lot of people who work in IT probably know. So I mean, it's just a good idea to take basic safety precautions like that to keep yourself healthy and safe, because I mean, wireless, you can't see it, but it's always there. Think of it like gravity, or I guess some people don't believe in gravity. But let's say you walk to the edge of a cliff. Now you inherently know that if you walk over the cliff, you're going to fall down, and depending on the length of the cliff, hit your head and your skull will split apart. Or if you're on top of the San Francisco Bridge, you know that if you're going to hop over the railing, you're going to fall a very long ways and hit the water. And your chances of survival are pretty slim. Now you just know that. Even though you can't really see it, you know it. You know that the distance between you and the water is quite significant. And if you remove the impediments to that, you're going to fall. That's basically how wireless works. You can't see it, but it's there. And you have to put up the impediment to it. I know it's a little difficult to wrap your head around it, but now does that mean wear a tinfoil hat around? Not necessarily, but it definitely would be a good idea to take basic precautions, such as keeping your house, just painting your walls with some conductive paint or something like that, or thicker walls, or maybe finding some insulation that cuts down on sound waves like that. So, and the lower the sound waves, the easier it can penetrate into buildings. So people have always been getting hit with AM/FM radio radiation and TV signal radiation. That's basically unavoidable now. But the 5G is definitely a bigger concern, because that just covers a vast more. See, up to this point, we've only gotten up to about 5 gigahertz of wireless signals. So now we're going to go up 20 times that to 100 gigahertz, which is very concerning to me, and hopefully to you, the ladies and gentlemen in the audience at home as well. So, I mean, this unequivocally, the Kaiser Permanente division research unequivocally proved that Women with exposure to Wi-Fi increases their chances of miscarriage. I mean, obviously, it's not doing any good for you, or your children, or anybody else. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to think of a world without Wi-Fi networks right now. Like, for example, you know, the insanely expensive camera. It's basically sending out signals that are bouncing off of me and then going back to the camera and saying, this is the picture we need, this is the depth and the colors and all that good fun stuff. Therefore, it's unavoidable, but we can take basic precautions to try to at least somehow rectify the situation. Or to some individual that I met a long time ago, he was an educator, and he said, you're never going to have perfect test scores, and you're never going to be a perfect, flawless at everything that it is that you do. But it's like a war. You need to minimize casualties. There's always going to be casualties, so it's incumbent upon you to minimize them. I thought it was a pretty funny analogy, but it's absolutely true in all aspects of worldly living. So, one other thing that I wanted to touch base on today, ladies and gentlemen. Plastic may soon outweigh fish as world's oceans become dumping grounds. Now this is what we've touched base on this before, but it's always, plastics, you know, they leach the bisphenol A and a lot of other cancer-causing agents in them. So storing food, for example, it's generally a good idea to utilize glass containers, especially microwaving it, because when you heat products up, it excites their molecules and then they do strange things at a molecular level. So that's why it's always a good idea to try to avoid microwaving plastics, because you never know what could be leaching into the food. And then just storing in general, it's more convenient to store it with glass, and it's safer too, and it doesn't leach any funny taste into the food, especially acid food. I mean, alcohol, for example, is almost nearly all of it is sold in glass bottles. There are some cheap vodka that might be in a plastic bottle or whatever, but if you get decent olive oil or apple cider vinegar, it's always a glass bottle. And an amber colored bottle too helps to reduce the light waves that'll cause oil to get stale and all that too. So the World Economic Forum by 2050 anticipates that plastic will be at a higher percentage by weight than fish in the ocean. One of the reasons why is plastics do not degrade for hundreds of years. See, a lot of the scientists, I mean, they're good, hard-working men and women of probably the world, and they probably mean well. They just want to show up to work and complete their objective. Their objective is to make a product that lasts a long time and that it preserves the item that it's sold in. They don't really care about anything beyond that. So it is probably a good idea to start considering biodegradable ingredients and materials to use as far as these one-off, one-time use items that are sold in the store. And a lot of it too is your own personal use as well. Drinking water, for example. I mean, you'd use a lot less plastic bottles if you had clean water at your house or a well or something like that, then yeah, just go ahead, get a pitcher filter and dump it into a glass apple cider jug and call it good. It seems like that would work out pretty splendidly. And there are other few precautions to take as well. I mean, if you're going to buy Tupperware, just go ahead and get the glass. Saving glass jars is definitely a good idea too. You never know when they're going to come in handy. Just make sure you wash them when you use them. One thing you don't want to do is have a glass jar sitting around for a couple of years and then you just dump some water in and then go on a jog and start drinking out of it, because it may have grown some type of bacteria or pathogens that will cause possibly very horrible side effects, or just uncomfortable side effects too. So that is definitely another thing to consider. Cleanliness, tidiness, all that plays an important role in your life and making yourselves great again. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've come to the conclusion of this broadcast. It is New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2018, the last day of 2018. It was the first year, the birth of text messages, and the resurrection too. Hopefully it won't be the death as well. And if we make it another 7 hours or 5 hours, then we should be good. Well, we thank you for joining us once again. We salute you, ladies and gentlemen at home. Sorry there's no green screen today. Green screen can really only be used when we have ample lighting. And when we broadcast at night, you know, there's going to be shadows on it, which would look very bad to transpose a screen on here. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and we're probably going to have to film at night most of the time. But we will try to film in the morning or the afternoon just so that we can utilize the fancy green screen. But we salute you to ladies and gentlemen at home. Have a good new year. Actually, by the time this broadcast hits your ways, it probably will be a new year already. So have a good week. Enjoy your time and stay healthy.